This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. We're pleased to announce that we are now selling our physical magazines directly on our website. You can browse by magazine title or search for a particular issue using the search bar. To pay us a visit, please click the link in the description. Enjoy. It may sound unbelievable, but during the second decade of the 20th century, a Mexican border outlaw named Doroteo Arango, later known to history as Pancho Villa, amassed a vast fortune in stolen treasure. Even more astonishing is the belief that a large portion of this wealth still remains hidden in secret caches on both sides of the US-Mexico border. What lends credibility to this tale is the legacy of Pancho Villa himself, a figure infamous for his bold raids, robberies, and violence during the turbulent 1910s. Many who are familiar with his exploits sincerely believe that Villa accumulated tons of gold, silver, and jewels as the leader of a fiercely loyal partisan army, one motivated by a volatile mix of patriotism and banditry. His forces ravaged northern Mexico and even launched daring incursions into Texas and New Mexico, looting vaults, robbing victims, and seizing anything of value. Villa spared nothing that could be turned into pesos. As the political climate shifted, Villa disbanded his army and retired to a life of comfort. But in 1923, before he could recover even a fraction of his hidden treasure, he was assassinated. However, one of his closest aides, a fiercely loyal and secretive former military officer, carried his secrets to the grave. In a stunning twist, on August 6, 1956, an elderly Mexican woman named Dolores Aguilera Vasquez lay on her deathbed in a county hospital in El Centro, California. Summoning authorities to her bedside, she claimed to know the location of a $1.5 million treasure buried by Pancho Villa. Speaking through an interpreter to Imperial County Veteran Service Officer H.P. Ostrander, and in the presence of a court reporter, she revealed her incredible story. Dolores said she had served as a full colonel in Villa's army and had been one of his most trusted aides. To support her claim, she presented scars from bullet wounds, injuries she said she suffered during a botched execution by firing squad, after which she was left for dead. She also displayed military insignia, a record book, and an old wartime photograph identifying her as a colonel in Villa's forces. According to her account, Villa had hidden the treasure, $1.5 million in gold coins, beneath marked graves in cemeteries located in Robstown and San Antonio, Texas. She described the burial spots in vivid detail, including the names etched into the gravestones under which the treasure was concealed. When asked why she had never retrieved the treasure herself, she replied simply, "People would wonder how I came to possess so many gold coins, and besides, I wouldn't dare touch it while any of Villa's men were still alive. I'd rather be poor and living than rich and dead." Her sworn statement and supporting evidence were forwarded to the Imperial County District Attorney's Office and eventually turned over to the federal government. The contents were never made public. Ostrander later stated that if the treasure were ever found, it would legally belong to the U.S. government, as the wealth had been stolen from American citizens and was still considered U.S. Treasury property. Reportedly, the Mexican government and the American consulate in El Paso verified both her testimony and the artifacts she presented. Yet despite official validation, no known effort was made to recover the treasure. Dolores, who lived in Hawley, California, with two younger women she identified as adopted daughters, made one final request. She wished the treasure to be used for the benefit of disabled American war veterans. Despite being a Mexican national, she offered no explanation for this heartfelt wish. While official records suggest the story ends there, others support Dolores's claims. In Chihuahua City, Pancho Villa's widow, Señora Soledad Ciañez Vidal de Villa, confirmed that Dolores had indeed been involved in some of her husband's secret treasure-bearing operations. And just days later, on August 14, 1956, Colonel Mauro Carrillo, aide to General Francisco J. Mujica, told a press conference that he had personally witnessed Villa's men burying treasure near Juarez during the 1920s. As a member of the armed escort, Carrillo said he had guarded the burial crews as they moved under the cover of night. Perhaps his cryptic words at the press conference were not just recollections. They may have been veiled hints that Villa's treasure still remained hidden and untouched. A story published in Coronet magazine in May 1949 by Sidney Franklin added another layer to the legend, claiming that Villa's largest cache was buried somewhere in the Sierra Madre Occidental. Given the scope and secrecy of Villa's operations, that tale may hold more truth than fiction. To this day, many believe Pancho Villa's lost hoards still lie buried, waiting for the right hands, or perhaps the right moment, to be unearthed. Sidney Franklin, a Brooklyn-born matador who moved to Mexico in the 1920s, didn't just find fame in the bull ring. He also found himself in the company of former revolutionaries who had once ridden with Pancho Villa. Among them was one of Villa's most trusted former lieutenants. Before his death, this man shared with Franklin a secret that has lingered ever since. He claimed Villa had buried 26 tons of gold bars after making peace, knowing full well that he would be hunted for the rest of his life. Too much blood had been spilled for that gold to ever be spent safely, the old soldier said. So he buried it and let it be forgotten. It sounds like legend, but many historians believe there is reason to take it seriously. The scale of Pancho Villa's operations, the sheer number of men under his command, the years he spent in the field, and the massive amount of treasure he looted all point to something far more substantial than myth. The story begins in 1909 in a saloon in El Paso, Texas, where a small-time Mexican outlaw named Doroteo Arango had taken refuge from Mexican authorities. While there, he struck up a conversation with an American journalist desperate for compelling stories. Mexican politics were in turmoil, and the two men, half drunk and disinterested at first, soon discovered they shared a revolutionary spirit. The journalist, seeing untapped potential in Arango, suggested a bold rebranding. Fueled by tequila and ambition, Arango walked out of that bar, reborn, as Pancho Villa, a fierce symbol of resistance and revolution. Villa began organizing his ragtag group of outlaws into a disciplined force. What held them together wasn't ideology alone, but the promise of loot, women, and endless tequila. His followers came from all walks of desperation, dispossessed peasants, hardened criminals, and political renegades. To Villa's surprise, their loyalty and ferocity became the bedrock of his uprising. By 1910, Villa had grown powerful enough to join Francisco Madero's uprising against the Diaz regime. Though he aligned himself with the revolutionary cause, Villa never lost sight of the tangible spoils of war. Whenever his forces approached a town, bankers rushed to open their vaults to avoid bloodshed. Resistance was usually met with swift and brutal retaliation. As his victories mounted, so too did the treasure. Vaults, coin purses, and jewelry boxes were emptied. At first, Villa is said to have hidden his loot in scattered caches, possibly even in graveyards across Texas, as later stories suggest. But according to Franklin's account, Villa eventually became consumed with fear. He knew his time might be short and began moving his fortune to one central location, the Sierra Madre Mountains. Mule trains packed with treasure wound their way into the rugged wilderness. Villa lived a nomadic life, operating out of ever-moving camps. His interactions with banks were one-sided. He simply emptied them. After every major raid, Villa followed a routine. He would pay his men in gold and silver, allow them a few days to celebrate, and set a future rendezvous point. Then, with only his most trusted companions, he would disappear into the mountains with the treasure. What became of the men who helped Villa bury his gold? According to Franklin, the story takes a dark turn. He claimed Villa murdered each of them after forcing them to dig their own graves, ensuring the secret of the treasure would die with them. Once the task was done, there was no one left but Villa to fill the graves. This tale, though chilling, raises questions. Could it have happened once? Perhaps. But over time, even the most naive follower would notice if comrades vanished after every treasure-burying trip. And Villa's men were not sheep. They were seasoned fighters capable of killing and dying for their leader. If he had truly begun executing them systematically, they would likely have turned on him. A more plausible theory is that Villa kept a careful list of those who assisted him, then made sure they were later sent on missions from which they didn't return. Some may have simply met their ends through the dangers of war. Others may have remained silent out of fear, and that fear was real. It lingered long after Villa's death in 1923. Even in 1956, Dolores Aguilera Vasquez, a former colonel in Villa's army, whispered his secrets on her deathbed, still afraid of what might happen if she spoke too loudly. After years of unleashing terror across northern Mexico, Pancho Villa eventually laid down his arms as the country entered a more peaceful era under the leadership of Adolfo de la Huerta. As part of the peace agreement, Villa was granted control over the state of Durango and awarded a generous annual pension of 5 million pesos, equivalent to $2.5 million at the time. Villa formally disbanded his army, retaining only a personal guard of 50 loyal men. With the revolution behind him, he settled into life at his ranch and began the careful task of retrieving the many treasure caches he had hidden during years of raiding and warfare. These were gradually consolidated at a central location in the Sierra Madre Mountains, believed by some to be a remote cave. Though his treasure recovery efforts were not entirely secret, Villa was careful. His movements were observed, up to a point. That point ended wherever his bodyguards halted. From there, Villa ventured alone deep into the rugged landscape. His guards made sure that no one followed. He made frequent visits to the village of Jimenez, located about 50 miles from Chihuahua City, referring to it as his personal headquarters. His residence there, as of 1966, was still occupied by Señora Villa, and visitors could still feel the echo of history in its walls. But Villa's past had created many enemies, and they had long memories. There were those who had lost everything to his campaigns, families shattered, homes destroyed, and lives scarred forever. Some men had watched their entire kin slaughtered by Villa's forces. Others bore the weight of stolen wealth and unspeakable violence. They had not forgotten, and they would not forgive. On July 20th, 1923, during another visit to Jimenez, retribution arrived. As Villa's car sped through the streets, it was met with a hail of machine gun fire and hand grenades. The man who had once ruled northern Mexico with an iron fist was finally brought down. His body, bloodied and lifeless, was found hanging halfway out of the car, his shoulders resting on the running board, a stark contrast to the commanding figure he had once been. Time, vengeance, and the haunted memories of his victims had caught up with him. Yet, even in death, one final mystery endures. Some believe that what may be one of the greatest buried treasures in history still lies hidden deep within the Sierra Madre Mountains, a forgotten legacy of gold, violence, and revolution, sealed by the silence of those who never returned. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.